Well, we come to probably one of the books in the Old Testament canon that people rarely ever read and probably don't know the content of. I remember the very first time uh, my family, when I was a kid, decided to read all the way through the Bible. When we got to this book, this was a discovery for us. We didn't know there was so much about sex in the Bible at all, and for a bunch of little Bible Belt families. That was it was a bit of a shock, but it is here, Song of Songs. Typically, the English title is Song of Solomon. This title is not indicative of who actually wrote the book. Although certainly Solomon's romantic life would put him in a good spot to have written the book, or at least benefited from the book, perhaps at a wedding. This is the type of literature in the ancient world that would have been read at a wedding, if you can believe that. The Hebrew opening verse is Song of Songs, and in Hebrew that's a superlative idea. So this is the ultimate song, and this is, of course, the way that or what would be thought of with regard to sex as being such a powerful and bonding human act and engagement. The authorship seems to be an anthology of songs. Still seems to be a unity of themes and characters, but there really isn't a narrative, and so there's not a story, so to speak. But you seem to feel like you're watching almost like maybe a series of commercials, like the Geico commercial. There's no real narrative commercials there with Flo, but you always know Flo as soon as she shows up. You go, these are the Geico commercials, right? Because same theme, same colors, same person. And so in the same kind of way in Song of Songs, there are these episodes, right? But they don't seem to be connected. But they're episodes, they're songs, a collection of songs that all kind of surround this similar theme. Generally speaking, ancient Near Eastern metaphors for love and sexual relationships are abound in literature, and particularly in these type songs. Egyptian love songs sound a lot like this particular song, and like I said, would have been utilized for weddings. There's an initial courtship. There's seemingly adversity and renewal of relationship in chapters 2 and the first part of 3. There's the consummation of marriage in chapter 3, verse 6. Yeah, the idea of sex in the Old Testament. I have students, particularly traditional students, you can only imagine, always want to ask me, is there something in the Bible against premarital sex? Why isn't there a command, for example, in the law? And the reason is because the perception of sex in the Old Testament is if you have sex, congratulations, you're married. Sex is either covenant making or covenant breaking. It's a radically serious act. There's nothing neutral about it. Our own perception in our culture is that sex is a neutral act. And so whether it's pornography or whether it's any type of heterosexual or homosexual act, we articulate it as if it's a neutral act. But in the Bible, sex is never a neutral act. And so it's a covenant making or covenant breaking act. And in this case, the early verses of chapter 3, 1 through 5, sex is the celebration and consummation of the marriage covenant. There is anxiety built within, and affirmation built within marriage. And anyone who's ever been married knows that rings very true. And so that's the basic outline of the book. It's an ancient Eastern love story, a love poem rather, and so it's essentially about a monogamous marital relationship and the benefits and dangers that come with that. The song is a celebration of love between two young lovers basking in each other's beauty. Some fantastic, some really fantastic romantic things are said, and then there are other things that are said that we as moderns would never say. In chapter 4. The guy says of the woman, your hair is like a flock of goats, leaping down from Gilead, or your neck is like the Tower of David, and on it hangs 1,000 warrior shields. Those kinds of things just really don't come across as flattering to the modern American feminine psyche, and yet that's what they're doing. They're just basking in each other's beauty and their ability to satisfy each other, and so it pays homage to the wonder and majesty of monogamous sexual love within the bounds of honor and faithfulness in marriage. And there's a lot of folks who read it who say that the themes within here are meant to place the reader not just simply in the course of a wedding, but also fundamentally back to the Garden of Eden. That there's something celebratory about this, not just simply kind of a manual for great sex, but this is something celebratory about this song, that there's redemption involved here, and redemption and the presence of God and all these type of things. One idea, the textual allegory. Allegory is usually identified with the attempt to find a hidden symbolic meaning without any textual evidence or skewed evidence. Songs, for example, the hidden meaning is that it refers to Christ and the church. And so most modern interpreters don't see how that could actually be taken that way, and they perceive it to be just simply something guided by Jewish and Christian philosophies and ideologies just read onto the text. However, there could be an intertextual way to see this, and so there's a way to affirm the book's message with regard to sex and marriage without embracing an atextual type of allegory, but to also recognize that there's something about this, like I said a while ago, this deeper. There's something about this is revelatory of redemption. In the larger canon, of course, the revelation of God as man in Jesus Christ is the fundamental peak of the biblical narrative, and so it's where every story is moving towards, even if it's not explicitly being articulated. It's where every story is moving towards, and so there's this there's sort of this almost crossover, this reverse kind of or cross section of life, of current, moving back and forth. One writer noted, and so there's this movement of historical testimony of God, but then there's this looking back from the vantage point of Jesus. New Testament writers being confident that he fulfills the Old Testament message. They look back and they see the truth about these stories and songs through the person and the work of Jesus. So, I think we need to recognize this song doesn't simply talk about marriage, perhaps, but it talks about marriage using clear allusions to things like the Garden of Eden, the Temple, the Davidic Covenant, and because of that we can say that while this is certainly an ancient Near Eastern love song, has all the marks of ancient Near Eastern culture, that there's something pan-biblical about the shape of this book. There's Davidic language. Anytime you have Davidic language, New Testament writers perk their ears up, given that Jesus, in fact, is the son of David. There are references to Solomon. There are references to the king, possibly even an allusion to 2 Samuel 7, where the Davidic covenant is there. Solomon is the seed here, in this story, and the Davidic line. He's the son of David, the son of God, and so he's seemingly here as the second Adam, the bridegroom. He is the lover of the bride, and so that this becomes a provocative possible imagery. You get the notion of wisdom once again. We've already seen wisdom played out as feminine in Lady Wisdom back in Proverbs. Ruth ends up being the quintessential Proverbs 31 woman, and these themes are sort of here in this idea. You've got Solomon depicted as a wise man. You've got the woman's identification as a Shulamite, which is very indicative of Solomon in the historiographic narratives. Songs continues the genealogy ending in Ruth with David. The Shulamite's body is compared to a fruitful garden where the seed is sown. There's quite a bit of imagery here that isn't simply seemingly romantic. There's temple language. First Kings chapter 7. There's shared terms with kings and songs. You have Lebanon and cedar and column and pomegranate and lily and bud and sprout and gold. Not only is that temple language, but sometimes that's also palace language. So there's some divine kingship sort of imagery moving through this. Also, there's eschatological language. Numbers 24. You have aloes mentioned. You have this description of the gardens on a stream, and that only occur twice, once in Numbers, once in Songs. You have garden language again in Songs 4, in chapter 5, and chapter 8. You have water language. The concept of water flowing, particularly out of a temple, is both Edenic and also eschatological. So there's quite a number of things here. God's relationship with Israel is characterized as a marriage, and certain Jewish writers saw also a connection between Yahweh and Israel bound up within Song of Songs. And Ephesians chapter 5, Revelation 21-22, Christ is the king and the groom, and he is with his bride, particularly in chapters 21-22 of Revelation, in this new garden temple of the eschaton. There's more garden language. There's generic garden language, for example. It happens in chapter 4 and 5 and 8. There's cool of the day talk, which is clearly a reference back to Eden. There's also the reversal of the curse, seemingly here. The desire at the end of Genesis 3, Eve would have a desire for a husband, his husband would rule over her. But there's seemingly not so much desire answered by rule, but desire answered by desire here in Songs chapter 7. The man no longer has to toil in the garden. There's delight in both work and affection. Songs also introduces the concept of honey and milk. And this always seems to reference the Promised Land, which functions sort of as a garden 2.0 to some degree, in the Old Testament. Song of Songs is not simply a description of love as it should be, but rather a description of love, how love will be in the new Garden of Eden between the Messianic King and his bride. Or to put it in another way, the new Adam and his bride, by Bob Cole at Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. This is a very significant and time-honored way, in some very real way, to interpret this book.